Joining us now is Greg Zokera. He's a past president of the Virginia Oil and Gas Association. Greg has more than, get this, 35 years of experience in the industry as an environmental engineer. He's also the author of the book, Just the Fracks, Ma'am, which is a great book for anyone interested in learning the truth about natural gas and not just the hype from the environmentalist wackos that we're telling you about every day. Hey, Greg, great to have you. Thanks for being with us.
Good to be here, John. And by the way, on Maryland, I got 2 kids that live in Maryland, 2 of my 3, and they're really excited about the new governor up there. So I think maybe we can get another state on board to start moving forward here.
Well, we hope so. Anything has to beat O'Malley. Now we might, Governor O'Malley might be... he's making noise that he's still considering a run for president. What do you think?
Please.
Okay, you've answered my question. Let's move on. Hey,
oh, boy. Let the games begin.
Let the games begin. Remember, Greg, what was it, 1988? When governor of Massachusetts, Mike Dukakis, was the presidential nominee. They called it the Massachusetts miracle that he had. He had turned the economy around or something. If O'Malley was the nominee, what would they, I mean, he would have to run on the Maryland, the Maryland debacle, right?
you know what's amazing? My son called me, and he's actually he works out for a large company in the Baltimore area. And all of a sudden, he called me and said, "Dad, have you ever heard of Cove Point in Maryland?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, what's the deal?" He says, I just got a $100,000 order from Dominion, and here's what they're going to do over the next few years." And I said, "Yeah, they're going to be shipping natural gas out of the country." And I don't think O'Malley really understood what that whole thing was all about, what a big deal that is for Maryland. So in spite of what he was doing up there, they've got some jobs and coming into that state from natural gas. It's amazing.
Well, that's the thing we have to get moving in Virginia, Greg. The proposed Mountain Valley Pipeline, as you know, is a major topic in Southwest Virginia. I've been talking about it almost every day for weeks because it's a tremendous economic opportunity, not only for Southwest Virginia, which has been ravaged, the EPA and the war on coal and everything else, but it's an opportunity to bring jobs to Virginia across the state. And, we're talking about jobs, millions of dollars in tax revenue, revitalize manufacturing, energy independence. It's all there. So we've got this major energy revolution going on across the U.S., thanks to the discovery, of massive new reserves of natural gas in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. So we have the natural gas, but we've got to ship it. I mean, it's got to get from point A to point B, and there's only 3 ways: train, truck, or pipeline. What say you?
Yeah, and pipelines by far and away are the safest and the most efficient way to ship natural gas. It's kind of a no-brainer. And the thing about it is, it's hard for a lot of Americans to wrap their arms around this thing. But we've gone from energy poor. As a matter of fact, that Cove Point facility I talked about was built back in the 70s to bring natural gas into this country from places like Russia, Iran. All of our friends were going to ship us natural gas to help us out. Well, now that we're actually the energy gorilla of the planet, we are the leading natural gas producer, and now, as a matter of fact, I think last year we became the leading oil producers. That's why people in Virginia are paying a little over $2 a gallon for natural gas, for gasoline. I mean, so we're producing both natural gas and oil. That's phenomenal. But that's what's happened. Really, we've done in 7 short years. American creativity and technology, horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, both have been around for a long time, but our ability to put those two together, John, has actually opened up the Marcellus, the Utica, and places like the Eagle Ford in Texas and the Bakken up in the Dakotas. And matter of fact, the oil and gas field, that Utica Marcellus, is actually the number 2 gas field in the world, and it's right here. And you're right. Without pipelines, there's a lot of gas in Pennsylvania and West Virginia that's trying to get out, and without pipelines, it's going to stay there. With those pipelines, we can actually begin to bring that abundant supply of energy right into Virginia.
Greg, would you tell our audience a little bit about the gas revolution and what was the genesis of it? Why did it take so long for us to find it?
Well, we've always known, John, that Marcellus, in particular, and a lot of these shales, they were thought to be, we called the source rock. That's where the natural gas was actually produced, and it kind of worked its way into some of these other reservoirs. But we really didn't know how to access that gas. And so what's happened is through our American creativity free enterprise system, companies began to drill horizontally. In other words, instead of just going straight down and creating a hydraulic fracture, which is just a small crack in the reservoir rock that allows that natural gas to flow to the wellbore and up to the surface and come to people's homes eventually.
Right.
What we're doing, we drill horizontally, and it's like literally, we're talking about drilling down 1.5 miles and going out 12,000 feet in some cases, over 2 miles underground. Can you imagine picturing that pipeline being 2 miles being 1.5 miles underground and out 2 miles? And then we create multiple horizontal fracks. In other words, we frack that well multiple times, and what happens, instead of that wellbore, instead of looking like one well, looks like 50 wells. And literally what we've done is we've created world-class wells in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And that's changed everything, because now, matter of fact, one of the biggest problems we have today is natural gas is selling for right around $3, which is good for consumers, maybe not so good for the natural gas industry, but still that's okay, because the biggest challenge that they have in Pennsylvania right now is they got more gas than they know what to do with, and they can't get it out. So it takes pipelines to move that gas from where it's being produced to places that can use it, like Virginia.
And Greg, I'm seeing evidence all the time about companies that are actually insourcing manufacturing back to the U.S. after decades of outsourcing it to China, Korea, and other areas. And that's for one reason. It's because of the low cost of natural gas and energy. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Matter of fact, and that's a great question, because that's when I talk about we're seeing steel mills crop up in Ohio. We're seeing chemical plants come back to this country. And you're right. As a matter of fact, both of our governors, of course, Governor McAuliffe and McDonald, both understood that the importance of manufacturing. The manufacturers want cheap, affordable, reliable domestic energy that they can count on. And both our last two governors understood that if Virginia provides that, that's going to bring manufacturing jobs. And when you bring manufacturing and businesses back, it just drives the whole economy in a very positive direction. So that's really what's happening. And what's really exciting that most people don't even think about is what we've done with this whole natural gas revolution, because that's where we are. We are the energy growth of the planet. We are the leading producer of natural gas in the world, and it's bringing this manufacturing back. But when it brings manufacturing in the United States, John, it also reduces pollution and CO2 emissions, because those steel mills, those chemical plants are working under and even the refineries now operate under U.S. environmental law, not Chinese law or Indian law or Pakistani law, which doesn't, of course, there's no environmental law.
Right.
And we've lowered CO2 in this country to Kyoto Treaty levels, again, thanks to the use of natural gas, and it's phenomenal. As a matter of fact, I don't know how many countries have actually met those Kyoto protocols, and Obama's plan, Washington's plan, the EPA's plan was to meet those was, let's raise the price of energy, let's make fossil fuels less abundant, and basically the whole plan was have this carbon tax that would hurt the middle class. Matter of fact, my 90-year-old mother called me a couple years ago, and she said, Greg, she said, my gas bill's down $100 a month. Now, to a 90-year-old woman, $100 a month saving in natural gas is huge. I mean, it's like this windfall.
Right.
Well, what was Washington's plan? It was to put a carbon tax on her. If her electric bill would have went up the way the wackos and Obama planned it, she would have had to move out of her home, John. She could not have stayed in that house.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, there's no doubt that natural gas is the way to go, and it's a matter of educating the public so they understand the benefits of it, how it creates jobs, and is just consumer friendly. Okay, we have found the gas. We've also met the enemy, and it is basically us. And the enemy is environmental wackos that are stopping things like the Mountain Valley Pipeline and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which would transport the cheap natural gas through Virginia and also allow manufacturing companies to come in, create jobs because they can tap into the pipeline along the route. I don't understand the opposition to these pipelines.
You know, I struggle with that too. And matter of fact, when Governor McAuliffe had his big energy announcement, it was last fall there in Richmond. There was a bunch of protesters out there, and had this big sign and they're saying no effing pipeline unless it carries sunshine. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I mean, really? Because the real bottom line is there's nothing wrong with wind and solar, but they're extremely expensive, and it takes a large area. You put a lot of windmills and solar panels out there. You've sanitized that area. You can't grow trees. You can't have plants. You kill birds and bats and everything. So the reality is we need something. And let's face it, when the sun doesn't shine, the wind doesn't blow, you don't have energy. We need something we can count on. Manufacturers need to know that. What are they going to pay for this energy, and know that it's going to be there, that they don't have to worry about, a lot of times that biggest cost they have is variable cost is energy. So you're spot on. When you build those pipes, all of a sudden they become this magnet for economic development, because all of a sudden manufacturing can spring up along those pipelines, and they can tap into them, and all of a sudden now you've got this dependable economic source of energy that you can count on day in and out, and it's kind of like this economic magnet. It just brings jobs and businesses in their wake.
And Greg, the benefits of natural gas, just so everybody understands, they're not just economic. As I said earlier, the gas revolution in the U.S. is dramatically reducing our carbon footprint. See, this is the other thing that the environmentalist wackos don't ever mention. And despite all the nonsense from the liberals and the enviros about wind and solar, as you just said, it's really the transition from coal to natural gas that's responsible for the biggest reduction in carbon emissions. Can you take us through that?
Sure. And that's exactly what's happened. We've by using more natural gas for electricity, for manufacturing, for plants, and we're also starting to see expanded use of natural gas for vehicles. You start putting all those pieces together, and you're lowering CO2. But I'm going to take this to another level, because I consider myself and my colleagues in the natural gas industry the environmentalist. When someone talks about it, I really believe, and I can back it up, that the natural gas industry has done more in the last 7 years to lower CO2 in the United States and to clean up the planet overall than you put all those, quote, environmental groups, unquote, together and look at what they can talk, but what we've actually done has changed the planet. We've lowered not just CO2, but we've lowered a lot of the other emissions because, like I said, all those factories that would have been built in China or India are being built here now. So I look at myself, I call myself an environmentalist, and I'm dang serious about that. So I just call those other folks out there that are against the pipeline or against fracking, I just call them antis, because I really don't believe, for instance, we got this big deal with the Keystone. I don't think you can be a true environmentalist and be anti-Keystone. I don't think you can be a true environmentalist and be against the pipelines that are going through Virginia.
That's going to be the final word, Greg, because I couldn't agree more. What annoys me, I mean, I'm as concerned about the environment as anybody. The best thing to do for the environment is to be able to take the natural gasoline that we have and get it to places via pipeline, which is under the ground, instead of by truck or by train. I don't want it going down the interstate, and I don't want it going through trains through my backyard either. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Hey, man, thanks for being with us.